Dr. Umar Johnson was dropping some heavy knowledge at his recent interview with the Breakfast Club. Let's take a look.
Damn. Dr. Umar ain't playing today.
Yeah.
Let's get to it. There's a lot of things to talk about. Do you think President Biden should step down?
Do I think President Biden should step down? I got a couple answers to that. On the one end, presidents don't make the final decisions anyway. Mm-hmm. So because they are puppets, it really wouldn't matter if he stepped down or not. However, from an optics perspective, his showing against Donald Trump in that debate didn't look good at all, even though they only 3 years apart, right? On the flip side, I'm not too sure the Democratic Party is ready to anoint Kamala Harris as quote-unquote commander-in-chief, because as you know, in the post-Barack Obama era, the last thing poor white America wants to see is another black person as commander-in-chief. So I don't think they necessarily want to go that route. They don't have to. There's others as well. But at the end of the day, both men are extremely up there in age, because I don't want to be a senior shamer, if you would, right? Because seniors are just as capable intellectually, many of them, as those of us in our age bracket. At the same time, they're still the two oldest men to ever run and rerun for president of the United States. But you know what? Doesn't that also speak to the weaknesses in both parties?
That's right.
If Joe Biden is the best the Democratic National Committee has, if Donald Trump is the best the Republican National Committee has, what is that saying about the talent y'all incubating?
That's right. The Supreme Court is corrupt.
Yes.
Illegitimate.
Absolutely.
How come enough people not talking about that?
Because I don't think they understand the tripartite nature of American so-called democracy. The Supreme Court, the president, and the Congress, they actually have equal weight, right? Well, they did. But now what the Supreme Court just did was they gave the president a few days ago absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for decisions made in office in carrying out his constitutionally protected duties. That's very dangerous, because what that says is the president can never go to jail even if he commits genocide if it was done in an act of office. So let's say hypothetically Donald Trump or Joe Biden sends the National Guard into New York to quell a black protest, and the National Guard, God forbid, ends up executing 5,000 of our brothers and sisters who were protesting peacefully. Even though it was ordered by the president of the United States, he cannot be held accountable for that. Why? Because he did it in discharging his duties as commander-in-chief. So we don't no longer have a president. We have an emperor. We have a czar. We have a king. Because what the Supreme Court just did is said the president is beyond reproach and the president is beyond the reach of the law. Dangerous.
Yeah, and I feel like enough people aren't having that conversation.
They're not having that conversation.
It's weird to me. Like, I understand, talking about Biden and his bad debate performance.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
I even understand talking about Project 2025, even though it's a hypothetical. But this is happening now.
Yes.
And nobody's having the conversation.
And for black folks, it don't matter if it's Trump or Biden. The bottom line is the president of the United States, none of whom have ever been friends of the black community, will have the ability to do what they want as long as it takes place within the execution of duty. They cannot be held criminally liable. Now, here's my thing. I wonder what are the repercussions of that on the world court when you're dealing with genocide in the Geneva Convention. So are you saying that the president of the United States cannot be held criminally responsible for crimes of genocide against humanity? That goes against the whole Geneva Convention. So I'm wondering what the UN and what the world court has to say about the Supreme Court's decision.
What are your thoughts on Donald Trump currently, and in particular the agenda that is Project 2025?
The Project 2025 reminds me a lot. Remember the Newt Gingrich contract on America back at the turn of the century? It kind of reminds me of that. It is very dangerous, but when I look at Project 2025, a lot of it is already being carried out. So they want to eliminate the Department of Education. I think we talked about this probably my first visit to the Breakfast Club, where I spoke of how the U.S. Constitution does not give your child a right to an education. The word education is not in the Constitution. But many people feel like educational taxes or their taxes that go to education is too burdensome and cumbersome. And they're saying, why do I have to pay school tax when the Constitution doesn't even give nobody a right to get an education in the first place? So why am I paying for this? So a lot of people want to phase that out. Remember, when you go to white America, half of white America either don't have school-age children or don't send them to public school anyway. So they want to completely blot out the school tax. Not only that, the money that still remains, they want to redirect it to not charter schools, to private schools and parochial schools, which to my understanding is a violation of the separation of church and state. How can you get public money to the Catholic school. But that's what they want to do. They also want to shut down Social Security. They also want to completely eliminate all diversity, equity, and inclusion laws and bills. But I got to say this, though, because the Democrats are pretty hypocritical, because when you look at what Governor DeSantis is doing in Florida, and when you look at the fact that you got 18 states that have already passed laws to eliminate all diversity, equity, and inclusion program, that's a third, right? Why aren't the Democrats pushing back against it? President Biden was reportedly stated that he will not push back against the Republican effort to eliminate all DEI programs. So doesn't that make you complicit in the removal of the DEI? See, what the Democrats do that black people tend not to catch on is they'll let the Republicans play the bad guy.
That's right.
Because they can afford to lose the black vote. So although we don't support DEI ourselves, we're not going to be the ones to front this. We're going to let DeSantis and the other mavericks go out and do this. But guess what? We're not going to push back against it, so it looks like it wasn't us. It was you, because silence in the face of injustice is complicity. And that's why, as far as I'm concerned, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are two wings on the same bird.
So there it is. Is Donald Trump going to become an emperor? We'll see. But here's the thing. Like I said before, this power is invested in the presidency, not the person. So eventually, a Democrat will be given this presidential immunity when they get back in office. And again, I mean, it's good to see African Americans seeing that the Democratic Party just uses them. Basically, they give them the Kamala Harrises, they give them the Obamas, and on the flip side, they really don't do nothing for them. You know, it's benign neglect. So, you know, it's good to see that people waking up. And I'm telling you, the charade is going to end little by little. These little tricks are not going to be working anymore. You have to produce results. People want tangibles. They just don't want symbolic wins. And it's good that people are waking up to seeing what's going on with the Democratic Party.
Wants to label whenever you talk about what the black activists in Chicago are going through, or whenever you talk about what black people here in New York are complaining about, they'll say that's MAGA messaging. How is it MAGA messaging?
It's not MAGA messaging. Listen, the bottom line is when Joe Biden got elected, he said he wanted to fast track 4 million undocumented residents to full citizenship. Black people completely ignored it. I spoke on it. I said, do you know why he want to fast track 4 million? Because he know he's not going to do nothing for us. We ain't going to be motivated to vote for him November. So what he's going to do is have these migrants already set up with citizenship so they can replace the black vote that he loses. The migrants are being put in our communities on purpose, New York and Chicago on purpose, because they are what? The two blackest cities in America. They're the two largest cities in America. They're the two most politically conscious black communities in America. So if we can wash out the black with the brown in New York, if we can wash out the black with the brown in Chicago, Philly don't stand a chance. Atlanta don't stand a chance. LA, Houston, Dallas, Detroit, Chicago don't stand a chance. The migrants are here for 3 reasons. Replace us at the polls. Replace us at the low-end industry jobs, right? See, when Donald Trump said during the debate that Joe Biden is taking black jobs and giving them to migrants, he was correct. Although he didn't say it because he cared about us, but he's right. When people say, what do you mean by black jobs? Get out your bougie feelings and deal with the reality. 1/3 of black men have a felony. So there's a lot of jobs they will never qualify for. They are mostly what? Essential workers, warehouse, trucking, security. And a lot of those jobs are going to who? The migrants. So that's what he meant by black jobs. We got to stop being so sensitive and look at the reality of it. I was reading a report the other day. They said the Latinos taking over the construction jobs. They taking them over. And the low industry work, like your gardening, your landscaping, completely taking it over. They're not the enemy. The problem is black people don't get as much opportunity. So then people say, well, you know, white people don't really like brown people like that. That's true. But you know what the difference is? They don't have the burden of accountability with them that they have with us. We built the country. So every time they look at us or deal with us, the bottom line is y'all brought them here and they built y'all into what y'all are. They don't have to say that to the Venezuelans. They don't have to say that to the Colombians. They don't have to say that to the Mexicans. So although they don't like brown, they would much rather deal with them than the black, because with the black, there is a white man's burden that you owe them restitution for 246 years of unpaid labor. Now let's look at what Eric Adams is doing over there in New York. A family of 4 is getting $1,400 a month. $1,400 a month. Do you know that that's more than what some of the veterans are getting with a child?
They're getting more money than veterans who served in the military. Damn. Not only that, they're getting free food stamps, free child care, and permanent housing. Although New York City has a black homelessness rate no less than 35%. So you got black people who pay taxes living on the street, and you got migrants who ain't paid a single tax in their life eating and living better than the black people who built the country. If I was talking to Eric Adams and Brandon Johnson of Chicago, I would ask them something. What is the Democratic Party giving you guys that you're willing to sacrifice your political future to push this migrant agenda? Because I don't see how they get reelected by black folks. I don't see how. And if your city goes to the migrants, you can best believe the migrants ain't electing no black person to mayorship. So you're literally dying on your sword for the Democratic Party. Do you know that New York City has spent $1.5 billion on the migrant crisis so far? It's projected that this year, 2023 was $1.5 billion to take care of the migrants. $1.5 billion. 2024 and 2025, they said it will cost New York City $9 billion. Chicago has spent about $350 million this year on the migrant crisis, and that's expected to quadruple. And you know what was so disrespectful about Chicago with regard to Brandon Johnson? Remember all them schools they shut down in Chicago because they said they couldn't afford to operate them? Mm-hmm. They opened them up. Not only did they open them up, they renovated them. Turned them into apartments for migrants, so you sleep upstairs, go to school downstairs. How is it that you ain't got money for jobs for black people, which is a big reason why you got so much crime? You got all these homeless black people in Chicago, but you can take care of the migrants before you take care of black people. And that's why I'm hoping that Black Chicago organizes, just like co-founder of the Black Panther Party, Bobby Seale did at the 1968 Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Bobby Seale turned up and turned it out with the Black Panthers. I hope Chicago doesn't let President Biden and Vice President Harris come there, because you know the Democratic National Convention is in Chicago, right? August 19th through August the 21st. I hope Black Chicago don't let the Democrats come to your city where they have bred this migrant crisis and y'all don't do nothing about it. And I'm going to tell you who else needs to stand up and show out. Milwaukee. Even though they don't have a migrant crisis like Chicago and New York, the Republican convention is in Milwaukee next Monday, this coming Monday. And guess what? Milwaukee, black people are the largest ethnic group. Unlike Chicago, it's white, Hispanic, black. Milwaukee is black, white, Hispanic. But guess what? Milwaukee has one of the worst black male graduation rates in America. So I'm hoping that black Wisconsin goes to that Republican National Convention and exercise their First Amendment rights to peacefully assemble and protest. But don't let them come to your city after causing all these problems and let them leave without them hearing from you. They are replacing us. America, if they can do it, they're going to purge black people with brown. Why do you think the New York regents, did you see that they said they're going to stop requiring the regents examination to get your high school diploma in New York? Is it that convenient? All of a sudden we get a migrant crisis in New York, and now you don't have to pass the regents no more. You know why? Because we got to make sure the migrants take all the jobs from black folks. They're already taking over the social services. They dominated the social services. If you black and hungry and need some food, too late. The migrants got it. Same thing in Chicago. You black and hungry, need some food, need a job, the migrants got it. I'm trying to understand how Eric Adams and Brandon Johnson can hand out all these work permits when you got all these unemployed black men. Half of black men in New York unemployed. Half of black men in Chicago unemployed. But you got migrants getting jobs. You're holding job fairs for migrants. You're giving out job passes for migrants. And you know, because of the election fraud, if you got a work permit, it ain't that hard to get a voting registration permit. But I got a question for Eric Adams. Did y'all see he said that he was thinking about staffing the pools during the summer with migrants because they're good swimmers?
Right.
40% of black teens, 15 to 24, that age group, are unemployed in New York. Mayor Eric Adams, how you going to give the lifeguard jobs to the migrants when half your black kids ain't got no job? Don't you think you should start with the children of the black people who pay taxes? I really don't understand them too. I do kind of feel sorry for them.
Maybe
I don't
he
think
feel like black people can't swim. He's buying into that stereotype.